Hey, welcome to release question 39 for the Algebra 2 CST questions. This one says that this is a case. What are the solutions to the equation 1 plus 1 over x squared equals 3 over x? And so with this one, I'm going to need a good amount of space, I would say, to figure this one out. First of all, I'm just going to rewrite that over here so I have a little more space. I'm purposely leaving a little bit of space here. You'll see why in a moment. But I've got this, I've got that, and I've got this. And so what can I do to get rid of these fractions? I don't really want to deal with these fractions if I don't have to. I can think of that as a fraction as writing it, or by writing it over 1. And then I can multiply by the lowest common denominator of everything I see here, which would be x squared. And so if I multiply everything by x squared, that's going to get rid of all the fractions. I can think of x squared as x squared over 1, so if that helps you, think of it like that. We are going to be distributing the x squared to all the parts there. I'll talk about a different way to do this in just a moment, but let's simplify this first of all. So this would be x squared times 1, which is just x squared. X squared, you'd have x squared on the top here over x squared. We'll simplify that in the next step. And here you have 3x squared on the top. That's 3 times x squared. And on the bottom, x times 1, which is just x. Another way you could have done this is, or would be, to multiply every piece here by whatever you need to get rid of, or to get a common denominator, which would be x squared. So I could have multiplied just this piece by x squared over x squared, and I could have multiplied this piece by nothing, and I could have multiplied this piece by x over x. And by doing so, I would get a common denominator, and then I could get rid of the denominator that way, or just think of the tops all being equal from there, but I think this is probably the way, at least that makes more sense to me, and hopefully it makes good sense to you too. And so from here, I can reduce this down to x squared plus 1 equals 3x, and then I can subtract 3x from both sides, because I want it to look like the standard form for a quadratic equation. I want to have one side equal to 0. So by subtracting 3x, that gets it like that. And so from here we could try factoring. I could try factoring right here. I would have to have 1 as the product and -3 as the sum. Only one way to get 1 is 1 times 1, or -1 times 1. I guess there's 2 ways to get that. But -1 and -1 do not add together to get -3. So factoring is not going to work. But that's when we rely on the quadratic formula. So back to that. You have x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Yes. The Pop Goes a Weasel, more melodic tune this time around than the previous question. Alright, so we're using this, and we're going to plug in our values here. This time we have 1 for a, the number in front of the x squared, and then we have b as -3, and we have c as +1. So let's plug those things in. I'll work that out over here. So x is going to equal negative of -3. Careful, the form has a negative sign in it, so if your b is negative, it's going to become positive, negative of a negative. And then you have this in the square root part, or under the square root part, -3 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So let's keep working this through, keep simplifying that. I've got 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 minus 4 all over 2. That's going to be 3 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. And so you have 2 options here. You can either add the square root of 5 and divide by 2, or subtract the square root of 5 and divide by 2. So another way to write this would be 3 plus the square root of 5 over 2, or 3 minus the square root of 5 over 2. Now looking at my solutions, it looks like they have split up the parts, which is totally fine to do. So I'm saying that this is the same thing as dividing each part by 2. So we would have to divide 3 by 2 and the square root of 5 by 2. So this is an equivalent way to write this portion. Or you could have 3 over 2 minus the square root of 5 over 2. So it looks like that's how our final answers are on this one. And so that looks like not C or D. Those have the square root of 13 in them. And this one doesn't have the 3 over the 2 part. So it looks like choice A is the correct choice for number 39.